got 7 at the moment. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, Kathy will be 8.
Sort of.
Senator-
Oh, I am
Senator, we are
here.
live.
You are here. All right.
And Senator,
So go
we are
ahead,
live.
Linda. You can start the streaming.
Yes, we have begun.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the IFW committee meeting. We have 2 or 3 work sessions, 4 work sessions scheduled for today. We also have to vote on 626. I think we talked about that, the moorings bill, but we just have to do an official vote to move it over to ACF. Maybe we could vote to move it to Marine or something. I don't know. So just so we don't have to deal with it. But we will have to vote on that later today too. So first, we'll go around and do introductions, and I'll start with Representative Mason.
Thank you, Senator Bill. Good morning, everyone. I'm Representative Rick Mason, and I represent the great folks of Lisbon.
Senator Black.
Good morning, Russ Black from Wilton. I represent Senate District 17, which is all of Franklin County and 4 towns in Kennebec, Belgrade, Mount Vernon, Vienna, and Fayette.
Representative Alley.
Yes, Representative Valley, District 138, Jonesport, Beals, Addison, Harrington, Columbia Falls, Centerville, Millbridge, and Harrington, and Jonesboro, Whitneyville, and Marshfield. So I guess I got them all in there.
Representative Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, folks. Danny Martin, House 150, located in northern Aroostook County.
Representative Hepler.
Good morning. I'm Allison Hepler. I represent the towns of the lower Kennebec River, Aroustic, Georgetown, Pittsburgh, Woolwich, where I live, Dresden, and a small part of Richmond. And I wanted to ask Senator Black why he didn't tell me that there was snow here in Farmington.
Representative Lyford.
Yes, thank you, Senator Dill. Good morning, everyone. In Peter Lyford, District 129, which is Clifton, Eddington, Holden, a portion of Brewer, North Brewer, and Veazey.
Representative Neto.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kathy Netto. I represent the town of Winslow and a small portion of Benton.
Great. Well, again, welcome everybody, and welcome to everyone listening and watching us today. I am Jim Dill, the Senate Chair. I represent Senate District number 5, which is Northern Penobscot County. And as I said, we've got several work sessions and a vote we have to take later this morning. So we'll go ahead and get started right off quick. And the first one we have is on our work session today is the airboat operation report and presentation. And I don't know which one's going first, but we have Lieutenant Luce, I think, and Sergeant Dean, maybe. I see Lieutenant Luce, so.
Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative Landry, and honorable members of the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee. I'm Jason Luce, the Maine Warden Service. Sergeant Dean could not make it this morning, so you're stuck with me, but I'm here to provide an overview and answer some questions on the airboat stakeholder meeting and the airboat testing and training provided by Wisconsin Natural Resources Officer Mike Neal, and offer any final suggestions resulting from the stakeholder group efforts. I think everybody here is familiar with what we've been working on. So I think I can skip a lot of that if everybody's good with it. But the stakeholder group was convened basically as the result of a legislative directive for the report back on airboat operation and noise levels. Public Law 2021, Chapter 166 and LD 114. And if the committee is good with it, I won't go through all of the directives from that. I can if you'd like, though.
Why don't you? How many?
I can read through it quickly. If
why don't you go through it quickly, because that will just refresh us completely.
So,
I think so.
So LD 114 was an act to address airboat operation in the state. And this went into effect on October 18th of 2021. And what it did was it created a law that repeals current law requiring IFW to establish noise law limits for airboats by rule and replaces it with provision establishing temporary airboat noise limits. It sets a noise limit of 90 decibels as measured in a stationary sound level test as prescribed by the Society of Automotive Engineers in Standards J 2005. It also states that between the hours of 7 p.m. 7 a.m. the operational noise limit is 75 decibels as measured by the shoreline test, except to the extent necessary to achieve headway speed when leaving a boat launch or to get off a tidal flat. After 7 a.m. and before 7 p.m., the operational noise limit is 90 decibels as measured by the shoreline test, except to the extent necessary to achieve headway speed when leaving a boat launch or to get off a tidal flat. The statutory provision establishing noise limits is set to be repealed September 30th in 2022. The Commissioner of Marine Resources and Commissioner of IFW shall convene a stakeholder group on issues related to airboat noise. And then the formation of the group, the stakeholder group must include a Marine Patrol officer and a game warden appointed by the commissioners and the following members to serve as part of the stakeholder group. 3 commercial marine shellfish harvesters who operate airboats, 2 resident coastal property owners, 2 municipal marine shellfish officers, and 2 coastal municipal administrators. The commissioners or the commissioners designees serve as co-chairs of the stakeholder group. The co-chairs shall call and convene the first meeting of the stakeholder group no later than 30 days following the effective date of this section. The duties of the stakeholder group are as follows. They shall examine and determine airboat mechanical systems and adjustments that result in the lowest practically achievable airboat decibel levels. They shall examine and determine available federal or other funding to assist airboat owners in addressing any identified deficiencies in their airboat mechanical systems to achieve the results determined under paragraph A, and may examine any related issues to the stakeholder group that the stakeholder group determines appropriate, including but not limited to establishing and restoring shellfish harvester access to coastal tidal areas, airboat operational techniques to allow for lower decibel levels, and appropriate training and equipment for state and municipal law enforcement officers. 3, the commissioner shall provide necessary staffing services to the stakeholder group. Within existing resources, the commissioner shall arrange for input from experts in airboat noise. The commissioner shall ensure that local sound data related to airboat use on inland and coastal waters using SAE standards J 1970, SAE standards J 34, and SAE standards J 2005 testing procedures as gathered and provided to the stakeholder group. For the sections of this subsection, SAE standards means technical standards adopted by the Society of Automotive Engineers. By January 15th, 2022, Commissioner shall report to the Joint Standing Committee on Marine Resources and the Joint Standing Committee on IFW the findings and recommendations of the stakeholder group, including any recommendations to the legislation. After receiving the report, the Joint Standing Committee on IFW may report out a bill relating to the airboats to the 130th legislature. What happened was we convened 5 different stakeholder groups. The first one was on August 9th. We had a meeting at the Brunswick Town Hall, and myself, Sergeant Dean from Marine Patrol, Sergeant Joy from Maine Warden Service, the Brunswick Shellfish Warden, and three commercial clam harvesters, Abdon Simmons, Chris Green, and Dale Sawyer were present. There were also 3 property owners, Spike Hable, Dave Cox, and Dan Walker. Dave Cox, and property owner and attorney Dan Walker were present. Freeport Town Manager Peter Joseph, Representative Melanie Sachs, Representative Jay McCrate, and Maurice and a representative from Marine Resources was there to take the minutes. So basically, we began talking about how we could offer some solutions to airboat noise that may be palatable to the majority of the stakeholder group. And again, this group was convened as a result of LD 114. We talked about at that meeting some of the approaches that we could take, and we also had, at this point, the departments had arranged for Wisconsin Game Warden Michael Neal to come out. He was recommended by the state, by the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators, as a professional and trainer in measuring airboat decibel levels. So he was hired to fly out to Maine and train warden service and Marine Patrol staff, as well as the shellfish officers on how to measure airboats using the SAE J1970 shoreline test. The group also talked about creating a new law to require airboats to have a muffler. It was actually later determined that the law already exists, so that wasn't necessary. And we also created an agenda for Wisconsin Conservation Officer Mike Neal that included the types of testing he would do while he was in Maine. It was clear that transparency in this process was very important, so everybody on the stakeholder group was invited to be present during the airboat testing and decibel level training. Am I going too fast, or anybody have any questions? Okay. So we had the first training on August 16th. There were game wardens, Marine Patrol officers, and Brunswick Shellfish Warden Daniel Sabane met at the Brunswick Police Department for decibel level training. Warden Neal trained the group to properly use the decibel meters that we have issued to us. So that was an all-day training at the Brunswick Police Department. On August 17th, the group went to Wharton's Point, the boat launch there in Brunswick, to test the airboats. So, and during that time, there were two separate tests that were done. And again, at this time, we arranged so that a bunch of the commercial harvesters were present, so that they voluntarily came so we could test their airboats using the SAE J 2005 test and the 100-foot shoreline test identified as the SAE J 1970. And this was a very informative day for all the people that were involved. We also talked about potential mechanical changes that could be done to some of these boats to lessen the sound that was produced. On August 18th, the group went to Mere Point, to the property of one of the one of the stakeholders' property, so that we could conduct tests on airboats as they went onto the clam flats. This provided real world sound levels from the home of one of the stakeholders who has been impacted by the noise. So we did that that morning. We did some more testing later in the afternoon. On August 19th, due to the weather, the harvesters didn't go out, but Warden Neal was able to use some of this time to conduct testing on other sources of noise. On this day, Warden service was unavailable, but Marine Resources were in attendance. And that pretty much ended the testing that Warden Neal did while he was here. So on September 22nd, we had another stakeholder meeting, and during that meeting, we Zoom called or Teams called Warden Neal in, and he was able to present some of the data he had recorded to the stakeholder group, as well as provide recommendations on how to deal with issues or concerns that the stakeholder group had. Some of the options that Warden Neal gave to reduce airboat noise were: one, the change of the pitch of the airboat propellers or to add more propellers. And typically airboats with more propellers are quieter. One of the other suggestions was add an engine muffler or change the style of muffler to further reduce the engine noise. He offered that some of the options included adding extra rollers to the trailers to lower engine noise while loading the airboat. He recommended changing the angle of the airboat engine to ensure that the boat is using minimal effort to push the airboat forward. One of the airboats that we tested, the pitch of the motor required a lot more energy from the motor to get it up on the plane, therefore creating more noise. And the fifth thing he recommended was to educate airboat operators on ways to operate their airboats so that they could not operate at an accessible, so they are not operating at an excessive decibel level. That pretty much took care of that meeting. We met again on October 26th at the Freeport Town Hall. At this meeting, we went over a rough draft report that Warden Neal had prepared. Warden Neal later provided an approved copy of the report, which is attached to the report back that was sent to you folks. The stakeholder group discussed the report and the findings. On December 1st, we had a stakeholder group meeting at the Freeport Town Hall. The original reason for this meeting was to go over recommendations that could be reported back to the legislature. This did not happen because there were several key members of the stakeholder group that weren't present. So we rescheduled for December 7th, and we had another one. And we went over, at this meeting, we had enough people there to vote on the recommendations to the legislature. And we had several items that the committee was to try to agree on and report back to you folks. And the first question that was posed to the group was if they would recommend the sunset date of the current legislation to be extended to September 2023. And the reason that this was recommended was because this law didn't go into the current law didn't go into effect until October 18th of this year. Traditionally, during that time, that's about the time when the airboats get put away, and then the legislature is out of session this summer. So there's no real, we haven't been able to see if the current law is effective or not, or has the anticipated results. So the recommendation for the majority of the stakeholder group was to ask that this be extended till to September 30th of 2023. So we took a vote, and there were two members of the group that were in opposition of it, and it was solely based on the decibel levels. The second recommendation that was posed to the group was to do away with the noise level exemption for municipal and governmental boats, with the exception of for emergencies. There was one person in opposition to this recommendation, but the rest of the stakeholder group was in favor of it. The third recommendation that the group voted on was to continue to secure funding for boat access sites through sources such as Land for Maine's Future. It was also recommended that harvesters identify traditional access points that have been lost over the years. The group talked about approaching landowners and possibly trying to come up with some incentives for landowners to allow access. This recommendation was voted for unanimously by the group. The fourth recommendation that the group voted on was to ask the legislature to come up with funding to help offset costs associated with upgrades to make currently registered airboats compliant with decibel levels set by the current law. All airboats purchased or registered after a set date would need to operate in compliance. The group voted unanimously in favor of this recommendation. And the fifth recommendation was to have an educational approach to the new law. Law enforcement would take an educational approach when dealing with airboat operators who were operating boats that were not in compliance with current regulations. There would also be a social media campaign via Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife and Department of Marine Resources social media platforms. and emails would be sent to all license and registration holders. Again, the group voted unanimously in favor of this recommendation. And again, we have those were the five suggestions that the legislative committee wished to put forward to you folks. So in summary, the majority of the group would ask that the following recommendation be considered by the legislature. The first one, to extend the sunset date of the current law to September 30th, 2023. This will give more time to determine if the law is having the desired outcome. This was not unanimous, but 8 stakeholders voted in favor and 2 stakeholders voted in opposition. The second recommendation is to do away with the sound exemption for municipal and government airboats while still leaving the use for emergency purposes in place. This was not unanimous, but 8 voted in favor and 1 voted in opposition. At this one, there were only 9 stakeholders because Brunswick Shellfish Officer Dan Sylvain had to leave the meeting. 3, to continue to attempt to secure funding for boat access through sources such as Lands for Maine Future. It is also recommended that harvesters identify traditional access points that have been lost over the years, reach out to the landowners, and possibly provide some incentives to allow access once again. There was unanimous support for this from the stakeholder group. 4th, to come up with a funding source to offset upgrades to current airboats so that they can come into compliance with current laws. Again, there was unanimous support from the stakeholder group on this. And 5, to have an educational approach to the new law and explain the reason behind the law change. Law enforcement would take an educational approach when dealing with airboat operators who were operating boats that were not in compliance with current regulations. And again, there would also be a social media campaign from both departments on their social media platforms, and emails would be sent to all license and registration holders. And again, this was a unanimous support, was supported unanimously from the stakeholder group. And then there was some, again, the possible statutory recommendations on 1306A operating watercraft prohibitions. And the only changes on that would be to extend from the repeal date, the sunset date, from September 30th, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. So that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Are there questions for Lieutenant Luce? Representative Lyford. You're muted, Representative.
Thank you, Warden Luce, for that presentation. So current law is 75 decimals from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and after that 90 decimals, and the 7 to 7 can be violated depending on conditions. Is that now the law?
Well, so 75 from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So at night, basically at night, it's 75. And yes, there are exceptions to violating that, whether it's loading your boat or getting off a clam flat or to get off a tidal flat.
So that is acceptable along with mufflers on the airboats. That should be acceptable, would you think, for the clammers?
So the 3 commercial harvesters that were on the committee agreed to that. Obviously, they're everybody was willing to chip in and see if these things could work. So,
thank you,
Representative Hepler.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question and a comment. Question is the decibel level, the decibel checkers. Is that something that landowners will be able to do from their phone, or are there acceptable and unacceptable decibel meters?
So one of the things that we learned throughout this process is that the free apps on your phone generally are not accurate at all. So the decibel meters that Warden Service and Marine Resources have to be have to be recalibrated every year. They have to, and there's certain training that goes on with them. So it's been my experience that the ones that we can download on our phones are not that accurate.
That was my thought. And then the one comment I have is that, compared to the previous public hearing and work session, I'm really impressed that there was so much unanimous agreement in this. So I don't know if you're responsible for that, Jason, or not, but, I'm happy about that.
The group worked together really well, and we were making some really good headway at the end of it. So it was a good transformation to see from the first meeting to the last one, for sure.
Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering, what were the age of these airboats that you were testing out there, that you were using? Do you have any idea?
I don't know the exact ages. I know that there were some pretty new ones that were very loud, and some old ones that weren't as loud. So there was no. In fact, the loudest one we tested was a fairly new boat. But again, there was no consistency on whether an old one was louder than a new one. So
I was just curious. You kind of answered my question with that answer, but the newer ones, and like a new boat, if you saw the one today, they're probably not any quieter.
They could be, or they may not be. Something as simple as the pitch of the engine could make a huge difference. If that's pitched too much and it's driving the bow down, the operator has to give it more throttle and more horsepower to get it up on the plane.
Thank you, sir.
Are there other questions? The one question that I have, and maybe this ends up being a Julia question, but I'll ask you anyway, Lieutenant. So if we did your suggestion 1, which is basically extending where we are right now until September 30th, I think you said, of 23, then the other suggestions are still just kind of hanging out there, because what we're doing is just giving this a test to see if what we have in place works or helps. Is that correct? So this would be, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think that certainly is one of the most important things, was to give some time to see if this was going to work. So, and I think if it works, then maybe the other suggestions fall into place. One of the things that the committee was directed to do was to try to identify some federal funding, and there doesn't seem to be anything federal funding to upgrade boats that weren't in compliance to help offset the cost. And we were unable to find any federal funding. There may be some there, but the group wasn't able to identify it.
And I think we were told that could be up to $10,000 a boat to make the changes to bring the decibel down. Is that correct?
There could be, for the 60 boats that I think are currently out there. It may not be 60. I mean, if you do, maybe changing mufflers on one would fix it. Right. Maybe the boat needs everything. So I think it's dependent on the vessel.
Okay, thank you. Representative Mason, do you have another question? Do you still have your hand up? Yep. Representative Pepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to sort of follow up on what we just talked about. So enforcement of all of these things and implementing all these mufflers and stuff, is there enough? That would not be part of the law. Your recommendation, Lieutenant, would be just to sort of see, and the group would be to see how it goes in the next year, and then make other changes and see what kind of enforcement staff and training there is.
Right. Well, I think with this law in particular, the group was like, education would be the most important part on this, because maybe some of this stuff can be. I think they've noticed already that a lot of the boats, the complaints have gone down some, not completely, but and that's just because of the knowledge out there that this is on the forefront of being this is an issue, and that they're taking some potential enforcement stance and some law changes. So back to your question, yes, education would be the approach for the time being.
Thank you.
Are there other questions, Lieutenant? All right, thank you, Lieutenant Luce. That was a very comprehensive presentation, and thank you for doing work on this.
Thank you.
So Julia, what are our options right now as we move forward on this? We are in a work session on this. This is probably, we do also have a bill 1873 that we can use as a vehicle if we need to do something. But what is the stance that we're in right now on this bill?
Currently, we have a public hearing scheduled for the bill on the 24th. That would allow people to give feedback, and we can, with your permission, I'd be happy to work with the department on language as well.
Okay, but my question, I guess, actually comes down to also, if we just decided to extend this particular one until September of 23, is there any other steps that need to be done at this moment with any law or anything?
The committee is also able to report out a bill for the sunset, but with the public hearing or choosing to extend the sunset, either of those are viable options at this time.
Okay, if we, since we've already got 1873 scheduled, could we just extend the sunset through that vehicle, 1873, and then we'd be done with it for this year at least?
Yes, 1873 provides a vehicle for any changes, including the sunset that you'd like to make for airports.
So I guess, yes, I guess if the committee is in agreement, certainly we'd have you work with the department to see what the best way forward is, and it would appear at the moment the best thing is probably just to extend the sunset and see how things go. But I'd certainly, if everybody's in agreement, we'd just have you work with the department for 1873 on the 24th.
Great.
Everybody in agreement with that, committee? Yes. Yes. Okay. All right, then let's go ahead and do that, and we'll plan on hearing 1873, which will be the airboat operation bill, on the 24th. Anything else on this work session? All right, thank you, everybody. Next is the boating safety, LD 1663, which I guess is in a little different posture because this is a carryover. With that, who is going to give any update on this for presentation? Anybody from the department, commissioner, or his Colonel Scott here? He kind of gave us a quick overview last week, but are you doing it?
Thanks, Senator Bill. Colonel Scott will be giving the update. I think we just need to mount there. He should be right up in a second.
Okay. There he is. You just had a different name today. That's why I didn't see him in the waiting room. He's actually
much smarter today because I have Nate Webb.
He's undercover today. Welcome, Colonel.
Okay. Good morning, Senator Dill, Representative Landry, and honorable members of the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee. I'm Dan Scott, Colonel of the Maine Warden Service, here to provide a report on MD-IFW's work on LD 1663 that proposed a boater education course requirement in Maine. The committee heard the bill at the first regular session of the 130th in the spring of 2021, and your committee voted to carry the bill over to the current session to allow time for the department to work on some modifications to the actual bill language. So in the report back that you'll be receiving, I think later on today or very soon, we included some links to the original LD 1663 as well as our prior testimony. My intent here today is to talk a little bit about boater education in Maine, a little bit of history of that, boater education in the US, and then we have a list of proposals for the committee to consider when reviewing this report back. So it should just be a few minutes. The committee has considered several bills relating to boating behavior, boating impact to property, wildlife, the environment, and the overall tolerance with various types of noise, motors, and operations. The department offered and encouraged an education and encourage education as a potential solution to many of these discussions. Since the last session, we have worked with our colleague, Mark Chansky. He's the educational director of the National Association of Boating Law Administrators, to get an understanding of the different approaches to mandatory boater education around the United States. So we're really recommending, education as a potential solution to a number of the other concerns we've heard around boating in the last year or two. A little bit of brief history on boater education in Maine. Since 1987, the department, through its recreational safety programs, has offered in-person boating safety and education courses taught by volunteer instructors. Interest and participation in these courses has been relatively low over the years, and one reason being it's only been required for those persons 16 and 17 years old who wish to operate a personal watercraft. There's never been a requirement to operate for educational courses or a mandatory education to operate a motorboat in the state of Maine. And as I pointed out in the past, all of these courses have required an in-person instruction. So you had to actually go and physically take a course. Requiring boater education to operate a motorboat has been discussed in Maine now for more than 20 years. It was a recommendation in the final report of the Great Ponds Task Force in 1999, but was never enacted into law for a multitude of reasons. At the top of the list of the reasons were the cost of the course delivery, and the need for increased staffing with the department. Because again, keep in mind, in 1999, all of our courses were in-person courses taught by volunteer instructors. Many of the problems of our inland waters that were discussed during deliberations of the Great Ponds Task Force between 1992 and 99 are still present today. For example, noise impacts of wildlife, impacts of illegal operation, headway speed. The department and others who have interest in the use of our waters in Maine feel that the lack of understanding of Maine law regarding responsible and safe boating is part of the problem. Many of the complaints and concerns we receive at the department are focused on horsepower of motorboats on small lakes and ponds and operating at inappropriate speeds of some larger boats, as well as within the headway speed zone. All situations can be addressed with knowledge and enforcement of current boating laws, such as headway speed within the water safety zone and imprudent speed or operating to endanger. We communicate frequently with our registered boaters and people who fish regarding Maine boating laws, but we feel that this message is not reaching our broader audience. Requiring motorboat operators to focus on safe and responsible boating in Maine by taking an online or in-person course seems to be a necessary next step, as many communities that surround our inland waters are not interested in hiring additional law enforcement to address problems, and game wardens are a limited resource to address the problems at a statewide level. Our recreational safety boating programs have evolved over 20 years since the Great Ponds Task Force and 118th Legislature deliberated over problems on Maine inland waters. We now offer the majority of our safety programs through an online format, which is more readily available to the public and administratively more cost efficient. We currently offer 4 approved online courses linked from our website for interested boaters, as well as courses offered in person with in-person instruction from volunteers and department staff. We have a lot of opportunity to enhance all offerings to make sure they focus appropriately on invasive plants and fish, wildlife protection, and other environmental concerns. The technology for virtual courses using Maine-specific examples is now available to us, and we will continue to progress in this area, whether mandatory boating safety education courses are accepted in Maine or not. Quickly, boater education in the U.S. Previous studies by NASBLA, the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators, shows that states having mandatory or enhanced boater education programs in place the longest have lower rates of boating fatalities. States lacking any boater education course requirements have the highest fatality rates. Boater education today has expanded well beyond just a safe operation of boats. NASBLA education standards, as an example, include trip planning and preparation, equipment requirements, emergency response, environmental concerns, and many more issues. 45 states in the US have some form of mandatory boater education. Currently, Maine's only requirement is for boater education for persons 16 and less than 17 years of age, less than 18, so 16 and 17-year-olds to operate a personal watercraft. There is a link that's provided in the report when you receive it. It's very, actually very interesting link for mandatory boater education in the US. It's an interactive map where you can click on different states and see their requirement for mandatory boater education by each state. Many of our summer visitors that are operating boats have already taken a boater safety course as it's required by our neighbors in New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, and Connecticut. Additionally, most states accept a boater education certificate from another state if the course was NASBLA certified. So considering both the history of boater education in Maine and boater education in the US and the work we've done over the last summer and the past fall, the department has a number of proposals we'd like the committee to consider. The department feels LD 1663 offers an opportunity for us to develop a more robust boater education program in Maine to address many of the issues concerning our citizens and visitors who recreate and live near our our inland waters, alleviating some of the burden on law enforcement as a solution. Some of the issues we'd like to discuss with the committee and some of our recommendations are: one, proof of a boating safety certificate. So this mandatory boater education course would require operators to have proof available, just like a fishing license or a driver's license, either paper format or digitally, that they have completed a boater education course. We'd also like the committee to consider requiring data from online course vendors, which are approved by the department, so that we have the ability for future messaging, future law changes, areas there where we see potential increase in problems, to reach out to the folks who've taken mandatory boater education and continue to provide our R3 messaging to them, so we have a direct avenue to communicate with them. We feel that the course must be required to be a NASBLA certified course. As well, courses offered from the state of Maine would have a Maine specific component. Currently, the courses that we do offer online now are NASBLA certified. And we know it's important to ourselves and some of our partners to have a Maine specific component which speaks specifically to some of our laws and some of our concerns around invasive plants and other aquatic species. A couple of the implementation options that it's very important for this committee to consider, because there's multiple options out there. Do we require all motorboat operators to take a department approved boater education course by, say, a future date, January 1st, 2025, for instance? So, 3 years from now, all motorboat operators would be required to have this course. That's one implementation consideration that we see across the country. Another implementation option that some states have adopted, although it takes quite a bit longer time to get all your boaters certified, would be a born after a certain date. So just for example, for easy math, let's say we had anyone born after the year 2000. And of course, you usually have to have a lower limit. We can't expect 9-year-olds to take boater education. Say over 16 and born after the year 2000. So that would mean anybody from 16 years of age till 22 years of age would have to take boater education. Next year, all the current 15-year-olds would roll in, and the next year, and so on and so forth. And so mandatory boater education would only be required from people born after the year 2000, which, as you can imagine, takes basically a generation or two to get everybody up to speed on mandatory boater education in the state. So that's another avenue that you'll see when you review our links that some states have taken. Although the committee will have to consider whether that's in the goals of the state of Maine to have that type of implementation, because obviously it takes a number of years to make it so that everybody operating boats on inland waters have taken boater education courses. Other exceptions to consider, do we require registered Maine guides to have boater education, or is there an exemption? As well as there's some other licenses out there like the Coast Guard 6-pack license for boat operators, which they've taken, many dozens of hours of boater education in order to gain that license. Would they be required? So there may potentially be some folks that would be exempt from the boater education requirement, including potentially, does boater education, is it only required in inland waters? Obviously, we're inland fisheries and wildlife. We've also talked with some of our partners over at DMR. The reality is much of the boating that takes place in the coastal waters of Maine is more commercial fishing based. It's more less recreational type boating and less complaints that come from boats, fast boats being near inland lakes and ponds, homeowner properties. So one of the requirements which may be considered, because it was raised as a consideration to us, is does this extend to all boating in Maine, including coastal, or is it just inland boating? Age requirements, you may decide to consider a minimum age of, many states use 16 or 18 to require a boater education course, as well as a minimum horsepower. Some states use 20 horsepower, some use 25, some use 10, so that, the traditional fisher person who's out there with a 9.9 tiller drive motor and fishing for brook trout in the springtime maybe would be exempt from the requirement. Doesn't mean that there's not important boater education messages for everyone to hear. These are just some considerations that will have to be talked about by the committee. Finally, there is obviously, with any such undertaking of this size, with trying to educate all boaters in the state of Maine, there would be some administration by the department to implement successfully mandatory boater education. We've come up with a list of things that we anticipate we would need. Obviously, increased marketing and outreach to raise awareness of the new law and to create a smoother transition. So our R3 program and our outreach program would have to be towards boaters would have to be increased. We would like to add a full-time recreational safety coordinator designated as the water safety coordinator in order to recruit and train new volunteers and instructors to lead our in-person courses. We'd have to retrain existing instructors to include water safety in their matrix, potentially purchase additional teaching aids and equipment to support in-person courses, and to set a standard of online course delivery that meets the department's needs for reporting and access to registration data and analytics in consideration of user costs. Online courses must be NASBLA certified and must provide evidence of course completion with a card or certificate. And there's also some requirements around data management and additional time to pull data into our central database, either through our Moses licensing system or some other enhancements. So just, I think we typically register a little over 120,000 boats a year. So this is a large task that we would be undertaking, and that's why we recommend, if we're going to do all boaters, that we have a delayed implementation date of a few years, so we can build up to that, or even a born after date. We may have to. It'll take us some time to get up and running. 120,000 boats, even if each of those boats has just 2 operators associated with it, which some obviously have more. We're talking about a lot of boater education going on in the next few years. Also, as part of the report back that you'll receive is just an overview of some of the current Maine laws that are out there regarding boat operation and age requirements, as well as our current mandatory boater education required for personal watercraft operation. Additionally, there are an assortment of laws that we can provide, and we did in our testimony, I believe, last year around, boating in Maine is by no means unregulated. There's, I could come up with 12 or 15 off the top of my head, boat operation laws that are out there, including imprudent speed, reckless operation, OUI, potential safety equipment that needs to be on board, as well as headway speed, etc., towing skiers, and so forth. And links to all those are provided in the report back, as well as an overview of the current online voter education courses offered by the department. Currently, there's 4 that we offer and recommend. They're advertised as you can take the courses for free for informational purposes. However, in order to obtain a boating safety certificate in print from the course offerer, the people offering the course, typically then there is a fee associated with those courses. And finally, there's some other really excellent links to the National Association of Boating Law Administrators administration information, again, around mandatory boater education across the state, across the country, as well as some other interesting data, which can be kind of click links for the committee to consider. So that being said, I'll open to any questions at this time. Shoot. Thank you.
All right, who wants to shoot at the Colonel? I mean, who wants to ask any questions to Colonel? Representative Martin's going to start.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't want to shoot the Colonel. However, Colonel Scott, you mentioned on a couple of occasions that later today or else as a follow-up, we'll be receiving a report. Does that mean you'll be submitting a written report?
Yeah, so probably likely right after committee today, Crystal will be sending out a written report, not unlike this one, which will be an electronic form, which has a number, which will be basically what I just went over, but will also provide you with a number of internet-based links to the information that I provided around other courses that are available nationwide through the, as well as some links to the National Association of Boating Law Administrators. You should be getting that, I imagine, by 2 o'clock or so.
All right, thank you, Colonel. If I may, Mr. Chair, also, yes. You mentioned a couple of variations on a boating safety course, which is something that's been debated for many years in IFW, as you well know. If the committee moves forward on this here and requests that the department work with our staff to submit recommendations, or rather legislation, what option in regards to a boating safety course would the department recommend? Or is my question premature?
Sure. So we have 4 boating safety courses that we offer out there now. 3 of them are more kind of nationally based courses, canned courses, so to speak, but they are all NASBLA approved. And understand that NASBLA's approved curriculum includes many, many things that are important to the state of Maine. I mean, there's only so many boating laws and rules and concerns out there, whether you're boating in New York State or the state of Maine. We do have one course that we work closely with a specific vendor that we've obtained through the state service contract agreement, that they work more closely with us because they're basically making a customized product for us. And so we are able to include even more specific Maine components through that course. Keep in mind, Representative and former Commissioner, one of the things we've considered with this is we have both resident boaters and non-resident boaters. So our recommendation through Maine would be people would come to our website. We would point them to the courses which we feel are most specific, as well as some of which have a Maine specific course, a Maine specific content. And as well, through our R3 program, we're able to push out Maine specific content, laws that are specific to Maine, invasive species concerns that are specific to Maine. We're able to push that out to our user groups. However, as you know, if your boat is registered in another state in the country, other than getting a lakes and river protection sticker, you don't need to do anything when you come to Maine. It's not like you need to buy non-resident hunting license or fishing license. So we have a lot of people that come here with boats that are registered in other states. Now, keep in mind, most of those other states already do have boater safety requirements, boating course requirements, and most of those states go through some form or another that's a NASBLA approved course. And the NASBLA curriculum, the national curriculum, does cover rules of the road, safe boating, how to be conscious of your wake and your speed and your effect on other boats, as well as a component for invasive aquatic species, because invasive species aren't just a concern in the state of Maine, they are across the country. So that curriculum is very close to what we recommend. However, if we have access to, say, 80 or 90,000 Maine resident boaters who register boats here, our website will push them towards the specific courses that we prefer that they are exposed to. However, as the Maine Warden Service, if we stop a boat on Mousom Lake and they're from Ohio and they provide a state of Ohio voter education course certificate that's NASBLA certified, we're going to accept that and move them along.
Now, finally, Colonel, folks like our good Senate Chair, Senator Dill, has been boating for many years, as you know, especially when he goes out and fishes for his koi that he's got in the background. Would someone like our good Senate Chair be grandfathered in this?
So good question. And that would be, I'm getting a little bit of feedback and Commissioner's working on it. That would be up to the committee. So a couple of things to consider. So one thing that we have found to be the trend, a lot of people, when they think about imprudent speeds and recklessness and kind of crazy fun on the water, people think about younger generations, teens and young 20-some-year-olds. That's not necessarily the case with boating, because as we know, boating is a very expensive sport. And, we run into people of all ages who are out there, especially during the pandemic. A lot of people went out and bought boats. They weren't necessarily familiar with the boating laws. We all saw a market increase of activity on the water, and to go out and buy a $40 or $50 or $60,000 fast boat, which causes big wakes and headaches for some coastal pond property owners, usually it's people with some kind of financial backing or some kind of money. So this isn't really just a late teen, early 20s issue. So the committee would have to consider whether Senator Dill is, somebody in his category is out tearing around. We do find it's folks of all ages. One thing that the committee could consider is more so correlated, not so much with age, but with horsepower is usually more so the issue. So there's potential, many of the states you'll see when you review the NASBLA information have a minimum horsepower requirement for somebody who has to take mandatory boater ed. So if Senator Dill is out with his 9.9, he goes out a couple times a year and trolls around for salmon and brook trout, and you make the limit 25 horsepower, that wouldn't apply to him. And it wouldn't apply to many of the boaters on our lakes and ponds with small tiller drive boats. And you could elect to make that horsepower whatever you wish, 15 horsepower, 20, 25. And it would eliminate some of those folks that all they do is fish out in front of their traditional main camp. We would probably recommend that's more the approach to take than say that, a whole cohort of folks who are over, I won't pick an age because it'll get me in trouble, but over a particular age need not take the course. Right. Good question. Those are things for the committee to consider.
Thank you,
those
Colonel.
aren't easy discussions, and we have had them and thought that it would be important for the committee to consider them as well.
Thank you.
Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Representative Martin asked one of the questions that I had. The second question I have is more of a process question. We're not having a work session on this bill today, right? We're going to wait for the report and come back.
I would expect that now, with all the information that they've given us, that we'll probably ask Julia to work with the department and put something together that we can respond to in a work session at some point in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Mason.
Thank you, Senator. Colonel, you may have mentioned this in your presentation, which was a lot of information. It was really great. This must have some sort of fiscal impact on the department.
Sure, we haven't come up with an absolute number for that because this is somewhat new ground for us, but we did include in our report back that is one of our concerns. It would be mostly the heaviest lift would be for our recreational safety program to offer more in-person courses to bring up to speed the content which needs to be pushed out to further educating our volunteer instructors. And part of the report recommendation is the potential for an additional full-time recreational safety coordinator to be our water safety coordinator. As far as an actual number attached to it, no, we haven't come up with one of those. But we do, any undertaking of this size would obviously require more staff time, both on the water by my staff, as well as folks who are trying to educate all the folks that would be required to take the course. And that's one of the reasons also why we recommend an implementation date of a few years out, or at least some grace period where we can bring our volunteer instructors up to speed and get them all educated as well on any new course content, or develop any online programs further to include our main component.
Could this essentially be passed on to registration fees for boaters to help recoup some of it? You probably can't answer that, but I don't know.
You folks can do what you wish with it with registration fees. I do think some of the costs for some of the development could be passed on to the user through the course fee. Some of that would be kind of self-funded, but the department's piece, as far as increased staff time for recreational safety coordination, et cetera, enforcement, you folks could choose to do it however you wanted. I mean, any person, all motorboats are required to be registered, and this would apply to anybody, operating those motorboats. So if there was a place to place a fee in order to, and maybe dedicate it to the recreational safety boating program, that would make sense, sure, but that's up to you folks.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner, you look like you're antsy there to say something. Is there something you want to say?
No, I'm just actually trying to control the microphones in the room, so I'm toggling back and forth. Sorry.
No problem. It just looked like you were, reaching to say something.
Yeah,
so.
no, I will ask Senator before we leave if we could just get, when we're done with all the questions, I think the department would like some direction from the committee as to, what they would like us to move forward with.
Sure. Representative Lyford.
Thank you, Senator. Colonel, just trying to think of all the different things that we can, all the different things that we could come up with. What would your reaction be to, say, a warden volunteering 4 hours twice a month to put on a clinic?
So we're balancing microphones here. I think you were asking me, is there potential for game wardens to give 8 hours a month for boating education?
Yeah, not necessarily that number, but I was just throwing out something. Would that work for you or not?
No. Just to be brief about it, just basically one of the challenges that we have. We're looking at some microphone stuff here. Okay, sorry about that. One of the challenges that have likely created some of this discussion around mandatory boater education is the increase of folks who are actually out on the water and boating, and we continue to have the same 40 wardens or so a day out working, and our staff is best placed on the water trying to deal with the complaints and with the operation of the 120,000 boats as they come in. That's why we have a recreational safety program and a bunch of very dedicated volunteer coordinators and part-time coordinators to have my staff, which, when you start taking those kind of hours, taking them out of the field, it just becomes counterproductive because they're not in the field enforcing the voting laws. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to check that off on the list, so to speak. Thank you.
Representative Mason. Representative Mason, you have your hand up. You have a question? While we're waiting for him, I have a question. You already mentioned that you already have 4 motor safety courses. As you move forward, would you expect that now that I'm going to have to take my motor safety, thanks to Representative Martin, do I have to take those 4 courses to get my certificate, or do you expect one comprehensive course? And is there going to be a charge for that?
So there's 4 courses that we currently offer, and they're really, informational voter education courses other than folks who are 16 and 17 years old and want to operate a personal watercraft, because obviously we don't have a requirement in the state of Maine right now. As an agency, we feel the best way for us to get our message that's most important to the voters of the state of Maine and the property owners of the state of Maine is for us to work with, specific vendors that we have input with them as far as what the content will be. And we do have a relationship with vendors of that type because we offer online hunter education, we offer crossbow courses, bear trapping, as you folks are all very familiar with, archery courses. So our tendency would be to try to push as many users as we can towards that platform, because it's pushing out the topics and information that we know are important to people of the state of Maine, as well as property owners and all the issues that brought this issue forward. There are other courses out there that if, say, folks from out of state took, they were NASBLA certified, we would accept those courses as well, because we do think it may be unreasonable to require everybody coming from out of state to, before they come to Maine, to stop and take a voter education course when they may have already had one in their state. Now, there is the possibility for us to have other information available to those voters so that we can push out things that are important to the state of Maine to people who are coming here to visit. But the bulk of the voters that we have are resident voters. We would push them towards the platforms that we recommend. And one of the most important reasons around that as well, those vendors that we deal with on a regular basis with our other safety courses, once somebody takes that course, we are able to contact them for further information sharing around voting laws and rules, and do outreach to them about areas that are specific to voting that are important to voters themselves as well as property owners. As far as the cost of the course, most of the courses that I'm familiar with, whether they're the 4 that we recommend or some that are recommended by other states, if they're NASBLA certified courses, they have some fee associated with them for you to get your certification card. Now, again, many of the courses are free to go on and just study the content for informational purposes. But for any one of those vendors, for you to say, okay, I now want proof that I was certified so I can now show it to law enforcement across the country, most of them do charge fees of, you see, $24, $34. That's pushed on to the user.
The courses that you,
question, sir.
Yeah, the courses that you have now, though, like for crossbow education, hunter safety, are those by a third party, or is that through the department? And if it's through the department or wherever it's from, is there a cost to those?
They are, let me turn this down. They're through that same vendor that I mentioned that we have a relationship with. And
Okay.
again, that's because that, especially obviously hunter education, that's very Maine specific, because we teach,
Sure.
Maine hunting laws. And our crossbow message needs to be there. And so those are, the more we can give a Maine specific message, the more we think is important, especially to the voter education, because we have issues and challenges and problems here that may be different in other states. Just due to the nature of our small ponds and lakes and our waterfront living, in some more remote areas. So again, our preference would be for us to continue the relationship that we have with our main specific voter education and messaging that we can put out. However, we do recognize that there will be some people who will take some off-site courses. And the reality is, if they're NASBLA certified, they're probably still going to cost them money, but they're still going to cover the majority of the content that we think is important.
The reason why I was asking that was you mentioned earlier about the possibility of a physical note attached to this. And someone asked, I can't remember if it was Representative Mason or who, but, increasing vote registrations or whatever to help cover the cost. That's what I was thinking here, if there could be a small charge, $5, $10 or whatever for each of these certificates to help cover costs. So.
Sure, and quite frankly, I'm not sure, and we could talk to Emily McCabe. I'm not quite sure how, if any of that money comes back to the department, but keep in mind, one thing that we are always going to do is offer in-person courses. Right. And that's another part of the cost to us, and staff time and training, because as much as we like to think that the whole world is digital and prefers to go online, there's always going to be a group of our population that wants to go and attend an in-person course because they aren't really comfortable with online training, and they traditionally do it in person. So we'll continue to maintain that program, and we expect our in-person numbers, if we have mandatory voter ed, to really, really go up over the next few years.
Great, thank you. Representative Mason, did you have a question? No. Commissioner.
Thank you, Senator. Just a reminder that our in-person courses would remain free as all of our current classes are. But I did just want to remind folks that, unlike hunter safety or some of our other in-person courses, the voter education classes don't offer you any actual boat handling, right? So it's all classroom study. So the online courses have been shown to be very, very effective in this particular scenario. I've taken the Coast Guard courses with 3 different jobs I have, and not one of them did I get anywhere near a boat. So just keep that in mind. If you haven't taken that class yet, there's not an option to get in a boat. It's all classroom learning.
Okay, thank you. Representative Fay, how are you this morning?
Clearly having difficulty. Good morning, Senator Dill.
Since I know this is your bill and you're very interested in its outcome, I was just wondering if you had anything you'd like to comment on this morning.
Thank you for the opportunity. The first thing I want to say is a great note of thanks to the department. They have been working really hard and digging into data and what other states are doing. And I think thinking really deeply about what works best for Maine. And so I really appreciate that. I hope that the committee will also think about this and really hope that we move forward. The reason why I brought this bill up was because I've been hearing and seeing a lot more behavior that I think all of us would find unacceptable on the lakes. And it occurred to me that it could help with enforcement, and education is really the key to all of this, because I don't think people in general are out there trying to be, trying to do bad things. I think a lot of folks just don't understand. We've got visitors who are renting camps who have never operated a boat before, who are really pretty clueless. And I think a mandatory boater safety course would help with some of those social issues that we see on our inland waters. So I think getting something in place and seeing how it goes is would be a really good approach. We've heard, we started off with inland waters and saltwater, and it's really complicated when you try to include saltwater. So it seems like testing out how this works on our inland waters, at the same time potentially alleviating some of the challenges that we're seeing with increased boating traffic would be fantastic. And I could go on about this forever, but I'm not, because you guys have so much to do. So,
Right.
But I really appreciate the ask. And I think the thing that I would ask would be, let's think about the policy. Is it a good idea? And then let's, work on what a funding mechanism might look like as a separate issue. I think that would be my approach. Let's decide whether we think this is a good idea first, and then figure
Sure.
out how to move forward after that.
Great, thank you. Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to kind of piggyback on what Representative Fay said, and maybe anticipating what the commissioner wants to know from us, is that I certainly think that limiting this to inland waters at this time is a good idea. And I guess it would, I don't know if that's the kind of question that the commissioner is looking for or not.
Yep. Commissioner, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Representative Hepler. Yeah, we would like direction. I think our recommendation is inland waters only, but we want to confirm that with the committee as well. We'd like some direction on, do you want us to implement this with some sort of born after date for everybody, or, what is the guidance from the committee on how you want us to handle the implementation with respect to the who exactly will be required to take this on inland waters.
Thank you. Representative John Martin, would you introduce yourself and ask your question, please? You're muted, sir.
Yeah, there we go. I've been with you all along, but I will agree that obviously I'm so far away from the ocean, then I would obviously restrict it to, my area. I want to say that there's no experience in my 30 years of owning and operating sporting camps and having on the water at any given time 10 boats and watching. I don't think you can make an exception as to someone that's 40 years old is better than a 17-year-old because most of the problems that I've had have been with people who think they know it all. And they out there they go. So I would make the course mandatory and basically require that they have take the course online. At least it would be a start, and not necessarily we have to charge necessarily a fee, but if they want to get a certificate, they have to pay X amount of money and start with that and see where that takes us. But I think that based on my experience, I can assure you that some of you would be pulling your hair out by the time you're done being there with a week with 75 people.
Thank you. I assume you were including me in that 40-year-old group, so I appreciate that. So Representative Landry.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Dill. Kind of a follow-up to Representative Martin's point. He isn't going to have to take 10 education classes. Should he be required to see a certificate from somebody who is going to borrow one of his boats?
I would say yes. I'd require of everyone, because if you start making exceptions, again, it gives a reason not to try to get to that point and not, and I'm talking about getting the course online and being able to get a certificate saying they've taken the course. At least it's a start.
That is something you could do at your camps. I assume you have some internet connection. They could take a half-hour course before they hop in a boat if they don't have a certificate.
Absolutely. I have internet through the air. And even though I'm, 20 miles away from population, it's not a problem.
Very good. Thank you.
And before we leave this, Representative Martin, since you're kind of unique with this, what horsepower engines do you usually have on the boats that are available through your camp? Or are they through the camp?
Yeah, most other camp boats, most of them are below 20. We do have a couple, actually one on the party boat, and I don't let strangers operate it.
Okay, thank you. Representative Lyford.
Thank you, Senator. Now that the courses that are available have been explained to us, I was wondering if Representative Fay thinks we're doing enough or we should continue to go another step.
In terms of the types of things that are covered in the courses, or I'm not sure I understand the question, Representative Lyford.
Well, the state now offers 4 different courses, is my understanding. Is that enough, or do you think we should, go further with education?
And offer more courses on more different topics?
Yes.
That's a good question. I think covering the rules, covering the laws, like what are the laws around boating in Maine, is going to be really important. And I think Colonel Scott said this, that we've got some pretty good laws in place in terms of headway speed and water safety zones and environmental, invasive laws. The question is, do people understand what those laws are? And in my experience, the answer is in many cases clearly no. And so I think the course, may be designed around, what the laws already are. And I like the idea of having the option to take a Maine specific module that would help you understand how to be a better boater in Maine. But I don't know. I feel like the department would know a lot better about that than I would necessarily. Also, I could benefit from a boater safety course too.
Thank you.
Colonel Scott, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. Just a clarification, Representative Lyford, just your question made me wonder if you misinterpreted something I said. So we offer 4 different course options, but I would guess, I haven't taken them all, but probably 90% of the content is the same. Like I said, so you take a NASBLA certified course, whether it's through Boat US Foundation or America's Boating Course, or call it what you will, or even the vendor that we specifically use for Maine specific, 80 to 85% of the message for boaters are the same. Use proper safety equipment. What are the rules of the road when you're approaching or overtaking? Don't drink and boat. Watch for invasive species. Don't go too fast, imprudent speed. Be responsible for your wake, etc. So we offer 4 different courses just to give people the option to, so we weren't just picking one course and saying you have to take this, but the content is almost the same for all of them. The only difference would be is the one that includes Maine specific material. We can really customize the questions and our presentation to it. So we want to offer that one as well. But don't get me wrong, if you take any one of the 4 courses, the reason we verify them is because you're getting 90% of the information from no matter which one you take. So you don't need to take 4 of them. You just take one and it covers most of the information. And if you take the one that we work specifically with the vendor, you even get more information that's very specific to Maine. Hopefully that clarified that a little bit.
Thank you. It's probably time to start talking to Julia about moving forward here too, but the Representative Martin.
Yeah, very quickly, Colonel, could you get us email us the links to those?
Yeah, so those, so as soon as you get the report back, those links are in the appendix, both the links to each of those courses as well as courses offered by other states. One thing we kind of just real quickly want to get away from, I mean, you'll look some states, you look at California, they offer 27 courses. We don't think that's the right approach, because then we really kind of lose control over some of the content that's in there. But we think a reasonable number of courses for people to pick from, highlight the ones that are, you know, hey, this is really pertinent to the state of Maine, the message that we're trying to get across that brought this whole issue up, and, you know, a limited number of options so that we're not favoring any particular one, but that covers the course content that we need is most appropriate.
Thank you, especially the one dealing with Maine's information to me would be the most valuable.
Representative Danny Martin. You're muted, Danny. Representative Martin, there you go.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I suspect the committee will request the department to move forward with this year. Now, I haven't been around as long as Senator Dill and Representative Martin from Eagle Lake, but I've been around long enough that I've seen this proposal before us several times. So my recommendation, if in fact we're going to be asking the department to move forward, draft legislation and bring it back to us, I would recommend that we move forward and take baby steps, because we're going to have a lot of opposition on this matter. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, I think it is time to try to move forward. And I think what we were given probably a list of 6 or 7 suggestions, and some of those suggestions had a couple options. And I think what maybe the way to proceed is to ask Julia to work with the department, list those as our next work session, so that we have them and we can go down through them in this bill and say, yeah, that seems logical, just like what Representative Martin said, that you know, we don't want to take necessarily a big bite, because there is going to be opposition here. Committee, how do you want to proceed? Is that a logical way to proceed? I see mostly yes nods. So Julia, if you'd work on the department, I mean, it's pretty well all outlined. They said that we'd be receiving their report this afternoon. So I think we should be able to schedule this fairly quickly. Representative Lyford.
So Senator, have we determined that we're not what we are offering now is not enough and we need to add to this?
Well, we have a bill on boater safety, Representative, and to do the work session, I think we just need to go forward, because what we have now is just general boater safety out there. And that may be what comes out of our next work session once we start looking at the pieces that we've talked about today. It's kind of like a menu, you know, hey, let's pick, once we've got them in front of us, we'll pick what we want or none of it. It's like you just said, maybe the committee may decide that those 4 courses are enough and we don't need to do anything else, and move on. But I think that doing it this way, this gives us some more discussion, and we can move forward from there. Other thoughts, questions? All right, Julia, is that going to work for you and committee and commissioner? And yes, okay. All right, thank you. Next on our agenda today is a very short one, antlerless deer and crossbow discussion. And who is presenting this one?
I'll be running through the language, Senator Dill.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is everyone able to see this?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to begin by saying the changes to the bill are highlighted, but because this is a carryover, the changes from last year that had been in 1116 are not highlighted. So that's why you may see some underlined language, and that's just carryover language.
All right.
Okay, so I'm just gonna begin from the top, and if anyone has any questions, just let me know. Any substantive questions, I'm going to turn over to the department. So this first section here, what's being changed is that there'll now be a $12 fee, and that $12 fee less administrative costs, the revenue from it will be distributed into the main deer management fund. So next, what we're looking at here, this is the inclusive crossbow language. We are striking both E and F, and that's to make room for the changes that we'll go through later for crossbows for 11403 and 11701. So next here, 1C, also reflective of that crossbow change. Here, this went with the goal of allocating 2.5% of permits to the super PAC applicants with 2,000 or more permits. And again, here, this is just for the crossbows as well. Looking here at 11110, this change is removing deer, which would be game animals, to just moose, and that is for the change for the antlerless deer. So next, we're looking at the permitting section for deer. These changes, some of them are carried over. The other one we have here, this small language change taken as opposed to registered, and that's again to reflect the change in the permitting system. We have an extended, in addition to last year's rulemaking, for the authority in order for them to reach their deer harvesting objectives. So here, this was the goal that the recommendation that the department had set to eliminate swaps and transfers, and we see that reflected here in 5 and 5A. Here is the fee that we discussed earlier for the deer management fund.
On the $12 fee, is that a fee for an extra permit? Right now, of course, to apply for your any deer permit, it's free, doesn't cost you anything, and if you're fortunate enough to be drawn, you are. I know this past year, not only was I drawn for the area where my land is, but I also had a bonus permit. So is this the case that I could still be drawn for any deer permit, but if I wanted that second deer, I would be paying $12 for a bonus permit? And I'm not sure who can answer that, if that's you, Julie, or if that's Commissioner. Yep, go ahead, Commissioner.
So the proposal, Senator Deal, is that your regular permit authorizes you to take a buck.
Yep.
This proposal would allow you to take, you would enter the lottery, and should you be granted a antlerless animal in the lottery system, that would allow you to take a second deer. That second deer, the permit to take the second deer would cost you $12. Very similar to the cost for the expanded archery deer. So all the antlerless deer permits now would cost $12 per animal.
Don't you think that defeats your purpose of trying to manage the herd by shooting more doe? Now, to shoot those extra doe, if you would, you're going to have to pay $12 for it. Whereas if I put in for my normal permit and I'm out there and I've got an any deer permit, you know, it's getting later in the season and I'm going, wow, I haven't seen a buck. So I'm going to shoot the doe and fill my tag because I've got an any deer permit.
So a couple things. And I think if we look back to Nathan Beaver's presentation, I think it was 90% of the people in the state harvest one deer only, even though we issued thousands of bonus permits. less than 3% of people in the state harvest more than 2 animals. And for most folks, their preference is to harvest a buck. So we believe that having to pay for the permit will allow people to take both a buck and a doe, so that if they see a doe early in the season, they may opt to take it knowing they can continue to hunt under their buck permit.
Okay.
So we actually think it will be more effective in allowing us to manage the herd.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so next year in 11403, we're switching back to this being the vehicle for some crossbow changes. And here it's just changing the season for open archery, and that's what's here. And then again in 11701, it is the prohibition on crossbow hunting of turkey in the fall season is lifted. And finally, section 10 is an additional unallocated section that is asking the department to further examine the statutory changes and its impact for changing crossbow laws, and they will report back on that in 2023. And that is the full language changes. I know that the department is interested in potentially having a hearing. So Senator Dillon, Representative Landry.
Yeah, I was, that was one of the things I was wondering, that since we've already, I assume we already had a hearing on this because this is our work session. So my question is, how do we go about having a second hearing on this? Because there are some substantial changes here that I think people are going to weigh in on, just especially one that I was just talking about, because that's a major change that people are going to have to wrap their minds around. Even though I've been an advocate right from the very beginning that there should have been a fee for applying for any deer permit anyway, but so I guess that this $12 will now allow me, if I so desire, to take 2 deer, if I'm chosen. So the question to you, Julia, then I'll go back to Scott, is can we have a second hearing?
Yes, we are. What needs to happen is we have to request from the presiding officers that we may do so. And I have that form ready, and I can send it to you right after this meeting to be signed. And should they approve, then we can hold a second hearing on the bill.
Okay, great. Thank you. Representative Landry.
Thank you, Senator Dill. For the commissioner, is 2 deer going to be the limit? If there's a zone that needs more harvesting, can I purchase another tag? I've got a big family and they like venison. Can I buy 2 or 3 doe tags in those areas?
Thank you, Representative Landry. So for some parts of the state, if we are unable to issue enough permits, hold on, we're having some feedback here. I'm hearing an echo and I can't.
Whoa.
Okay, sorry about that. It's Tim is still, his mic's still on. I can There we go. So some parts of the state, some WMDs, and I'll just use some numbers as an example. We may have 50,000 any deer permits available, or antlerless deer permits available, and only 40,000 people maybe apply in the lottery and are given one of those antlerless permits. So now we would have 10,000 permits available over the counter for people to buy at the $12 rate. So the vision is that there would be a lottery. Then if you're awarded a permit, you have to pay for that permit by a certain deadline. And then after that deadline, the over-the-counter permits, as well as any permits that were not paid for through the lottery system, would become available for sale over the counter.
Very good, thank you. So there's no limit, though, to how many tags you can pick up?
Well, we would limit you to one at a time. So
Yeah.
you'd have to
couldn't go in
harvest
by
one. to
3.
get-
Yeah.
Yeah, so you couldn't go in and buy 10,
No,
right? You could only buy one at a time.
I can buy one on Monday and one on Wednesday and one on Friday though.
If you harvest a doe.
Yep.
But not, you can't keep coming in and buying them without harvesting them.
Right.
So you can't hoard them.
Good, thank you.
But she's saying that you shoot 3 in the morning, then you keep going back and buy the permit, so to tag them. Oh, no, that's not what she's saying. Oh, sorry.
He couldn't shoot 3.
That's true. That's very true. Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Dill, you raised a great observation a few minutes ago regarding a requirement for a second public hearing. We got to keep in mind that all these carryover bills, especially the one on voter safety, was discussed almost a year ago. We're making significant changes, and now we should be giving the public an opportunity to comment on these changes. So hopefully Julia and others will guide us in the right direction regarding this matter.
Great. Thank you, Representative Martin. Other questions, comments? All right, so certainly on this one, we're going to go ahead and request a second public hearing on this bill to go over this stuff. I guess I'd go back to, we'll see what we get back from the other 2 bills that we were talking about already. Representative Martin, perhaps, then to see what the changes are, how substantial, to see if we needed to go, like you just said, and have a second hearing on some of those. I would expect, like on voter safety, if we decided to go along with like all 7 or 8 changes, we probably should have a hearing on that. If we're just going to do 1 or 2, it may not have to have a second hearing. All right. So are we good on this one now? All right, we'll move on to the final one. Has Representative Terrio joined us yet? This is the one that he really seemed to like. All right, so we'll move on to the hunting dog and civil trespass.
Great. I'll go ahead and share my screen again. Is everyone able to see this?
Yep.
Okay, great. And here, there are still some changes that are being worked out. And so I have a few comments on the side, just that reflect those. So starting from the top, this permit section is entirely new. And what it does is allow the department to have a little more control and to create a penalty system for violations with hunting dogs. One thing that isn't reflected at this time in the language is the exception for hunting with a guide, but there is potential language here in this first comment, which so likely that would be put in. We have the new permitting fee also of $12. And the other thing of note in this section is that the violations for B does create a new crime, which means that under Joint Rule 319, it would need to be reviewed by the Criminal Justice Public Safety Committee and then given back to us. Not an issue, just something to note. So moving along here, we have the GPS collar requirement. There was the previously existing requirement to have a legible name, telephone, and address. This adds the addition of having a global positioning system tracker that is required to hunt or train a dog. Here, as we go through, you'll notice that there's different animals that are listed at different times. So here we have the addition for not being able to hunt more than 6 dogs with coyotes, fox, raccoon, or bobcat. which excludes, for example, bear. Moving on, we have further the training requirement for collar and GPS tracker. And here there is a second crime created that would need to be reviewed. And finally, this is the language based on the recommendations of the department that the department was able to put together for making it illegal to release a hunting dog onto land which the owner or agent has communicated that they should not, onto posted property, and then of course a further scheme to penalize someone who has been aware of that prohibition or that request. I'll let everyone look at this. We kept the very important turning a hunting dog loose definition that was worked on last year. And then finally, in addition to the civil trespassing scheme, there is a mandatory hunting license revocation, and that was just added here at the bottom of K, or as K, and then the only addition is the possible phase-in of the online training course, which could be added in an unallocated section. And that is the language for civil trespass.
Okay, questions? Representative Landry.
I didn't notice it, but I would assume this excludes beagles for hunting rabbit.
Yes, that's correct. It does.
Okay.
Should that exclusion be put in there specifically? I see the commissioner nodding her head saying, so we need to add that exclusion specific, no, yes? Representative, Commissioner.
Rabbits were specifically excluded. Please don't add them in.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Should it specifically say in the bill that they are excluded? So there's no question.
No, because there's lots of other animals too. So I think
Okay.
the ones that are included were very specific and precise. So I think we leave it as applies to the animals that are listed only.
Okay, sounds good. Representative Lyford.
Yes. So we have an out-of-staters come up hunting bear. They're required to hire a main guide, and in many cases, two main guides, one to go with the handler that's chasing the bear, and if they have a glowering position in a truck running around, going around the bears and whatnot, they have to have a guide. Now we're going to charge them $12 a dog. My question.
Okay. Commissioner, or whoever, Julia,
I
do
can
you have an
answer that.
answer? Colonel, I guess, okay. Colonel, geez, you're,
Feedback. So no, that Julia's first comment, if a person is hunting, has hired the services of a guide and are hunting in the presence of the guide, similar to the bear trapping bill that we passed last year, you're in the presence of, you do not need to have the permit. The guide is then responsible for the dogs, and they're the ones who need to have the bear training and hunting permit.
Thank you for clarifying that.
other questions? Comments? All right.
Yeah, and it's, so the guide would have to have the permit. He can run 6 dogs, and somebody who has employed them as a guide and is hunting physically with them. They can't just employ them, you know, in York County and go up and do their thing in Washington County. But if they're hunting with that guide in the presence of the guide, they do not need to have the permit, just the guide would.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, question for the Colonel. Some guides that hunt bear have multiple guides or handlers working for them. Like they might be, one outfitter might have three packs of hounds, you know, out there, do they all have to have, do they all have to have that permit? All the handlers, like say, you've got a master guide that has the lodge, but there's other guides that are dog handlers. They all have to have the $12 permit.
Yeah, they all hunters who are hunting with dogs for bear, coyote, bobcat, fox, and raccoons would need to have this permit. The folks who wouldn't is a person who specifically employs a guide and hunts with that guide in the presence of. So I hire, I come to the state, I hire a local bear hunting guide. You know, I don't know anything about bear hunting or running dogs. He sets the dogs loose and he and I are running through the woods together, trying to get ahead of the dogs to shoot the bear out of the tree. But myself and 8 of my friends from Hamden, we each have a dog. We're getting together. We're going to run bobcats this weekend. We would each need to have one. Yes. I'm a guide and I have 4 people who are employed by me and are also handling, releasing dogs, picking dogs up, you know, moving hunters around. Yes, they would also have to have the permit. Anyone who's engaged in the hunt, other than a person who specifically hired a guide and is hunting in the presence of that guide.
Yeah, just for clarification. So when it came, so like myself, and I just heard you say it, but I wasn't quite sure I heard what you said. So if I was hunting with a couple of my buddies, you know, and we're not guides, but we're hunting coyotes this weekend or bobcat, we would each, anybody that was out there would have to have a $12 training and permit. Each individual that was out hunting.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
The only other exception I'm looking at this is somebody who is under 16.
Representative Landry.
Is that a seasonal permit or one event permit? How is that set up?
It would be an annual permit like any one of our other permits or licenses.
Will they be available online?
They would likely be only available online is our goal, so that you have to purchase it online. Yes, sir. So you can decide, if you decide Friday night that you're going to go hunt Saturday morning, you can go online and just as you would buy a coyote night hunting permit, you'd buy a bear hunting permit.
Very good. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, Julia. The posture of this one looks like it's a little different. Was this one carried over, or is this one was turned into a resolve, wasn't it? And we asked him to come back, and then the comeback was that we could report out a bill. Is that where we were on this one?
Yes, that's correct. So we can report this out and you can take no stance on the substance. And what that allows you to do is to report it out and then have it referred back to the committee. And that would be done hopefully on the 26th.
26, right.
Yep.
Yep.
So moved,
Committee?
Mr. Chair.
It's been moved. Is there a second? It's Representative Landry. Okay. Do we need a roll call on this, Julia, or is it just show of hands? Okay.
It would be a majority vote, so it would be
Roll call.
great if we could.
Okay. Roll call. Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Starting with Representative Lyford. You're muted, sir.
You're muted, Representative Lyford.
Yes.
Representative Mason.
Yes.
Representative Hepler.
Yes.
Senator Black.
Yes.
Senator Dill.
Yes.
Representative Landry.
Yes.
Representative Martin, Danny Martin.
Yes.
Representative Alley.
You're muted, Representative Alley.
could try just holding down the space bar, Representative Alley. Senator Dill, shall I come back to him?
Yes, let's go on to Representative, whoever else is next on your list.
Representative Nadeau?
Yes.
Representative John Martin?
Yes.
And back to Representative Alley.
There is something wrong. I just tried to manually unmute him and it also won't let me. So there's something strange going on there.
He's unmuted now.
Am I on there now?
Yes.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna
And your
take
vote?
Stavis up when we get done.
And your vote is?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's 10 in favor with 3 absent.
All right, so it's 10-3. We will go ahead and report this out and ask for it to be referred to the committee. All right, anything else? We got to vote on, what was it, 626? Was that the one? Referring the mooring bill. Okay. We had a brief discussion on this on the other day and we had said at that point that it should go over to the ACF committee, and to do that we actually have to vote to move it over. So can I have a motion to move LD 626, the mooring privileges bill, over to ACF?
I make a motion that we do 626.
Okay, to ACF. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, go ahead. Linda, please call the roll.
Okay, again, starting with Representative Lyford.
Yes.
Representative Mason.
Yes.
Representative Hepler.
Yes.
Senator Black.
Yes.
Senator Dill.
Well, I end up with it either way, so I guess it's yes. So
Representative Landry.
Well, I don't know about this. Yes.
Representative Danny Martin.
So pleased to say yes.
Representative Alley.
Yes.
Representative Nadeau.
Yes.
And Representative John Martin.
Yes.
All right.
And Commissioner, do you have a comment on this, especially on this bill?
Thank you, Senator. I just have a question. So we were directed to, bring back a report to you all. We have that report. The result of the report is to refer the bill over to ACF. Do you want us to email that report, give it again, or give it formally?
Just go ahead and email it.
Okay, great. And so then we will not give you a formal report on this.
No, we may make you come over to ACF committee and give it.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Julia, do you have anything else for us?
I don't. I think that covered it, Senator Dill.
Representative Landry, do you have anything you need to say? Before we go, Julia, do we have to meet after this, chairs and leads, or are we all set?
I think it would be good to meet just for the schedule.
Okay, we'll do
If
the
you have
same thing we
time.
did last time. You're gonna have to immediately send us a link.
I will.
Okay. Any other last remarks? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded by Representative Alley. All in favor? None opposed. Thank you all.